So think of it like climbing into the death zone on Everest. You could go above it and summit, but you will die.
Having worked with thousands of athletes at this point, I want to know your insight into the way that athletes breathe when doing aerobic work. We talk about this a lot whenever we have people that are focused on cardio or coaches that work with martial artists come onto the podcast, because we had Patrick McEwen on, Dave Nestor. We started focusing on nasal breathing a few years ago. I started focusing within jiu-jitsu, and it's made a night and day difference in terms of just my ability to keep the battery running and not getting fatigued. So what do you notice with people and breathing, and what is the difference when it comes to learning how to do nasal breathing? Do you think it has as much of an impact as I think it has?
I do. I think it has a huge impact. I think that it's a very advanced concept that people jump to first. It's almost like high intensity interval training. It has a lot of buzz. It's got, everybody is talking about it. And so people want to jump right in. The problem is that they're bypassing the basics first. For example, like one of the things that we were talking about is the rhythm of the breath. Do you have a reliable and predictable rhythm to your breathing? And swimmers, if you think about it, have the best rhythm of the breath. Like your wife, you were talking about it. She comes from a swimming background. Guaranteed, she understands what I'm talking about. And if I took her out of the pool and she ran, she would maintain that same cadence. And this is important because remember, the oxygen is your aerobic system, that oxidative pathway. It's the energy that ultimately fuels those slow twitch fibers and those intermediate fibers. And so part of it is imagine if the brain doesn't know when the next dose of energy is coming in. If it's random, it is always going to set aside motor units because it doesn't know you're going to go into a 1 minute breath hold. But if it's a reliable and predictable pattern, the rhythm establishes, the brain builds up confidence that, I'm going to free up more motor units because I know there's another dose of energy coming in the same cadence. So you want to establish that rhythm as number one. And then number two is that you want to establish when you're in control of your intensity and when you're out of control of your intensity. And so in the movement of running, one of the things that you can do really easily is you want to count the number of footsteps you take per cycle of breath. Every time, so your exhale begins when your foot hits the ground. That's always what happens with all of us is the cycle will start your exhale on a foot strike, whether it's your left side or your right side. If you are in control of your breathing, meaning you are giving your muscles that are moving enough oxygen, you may be suffering, but they're getting enough oxygen, you're going to be breathing by taking 4 steps for every cycle of a breath. So it's an exhale, 1, 2, 3, exhale, 1, 2, 3, exhale. Now that's what we call a 4-count cadence. Anything a 4 or higher, you're okay. If you cross over into a 3, now what you're doing is you're going to dip into what we call a non-sustainable pace above lactate threshold. So think of it like climbing into the death zone on Everest. You could go above it and summit, but you will die.
Pat Project family, is TRT or HRT something that you've been interested in? Well, if you are, that's why we've partnered with Merrick Health, owned by Derek from More Plates, More Dates. They are the premium telehealth TRT and HRT clinic. And the great thing about Merrick Health that is so unique about them is that versus every other telehealth clinic out there, they give you direct plans for you specifically. Many clinics give you just plans that they give to everybody else, but we are individuals. We have different hormonal levels. We need unique plans. That's why you need to check out Merrick Health. And Andrew, can you tell the people how to do it?
Yes, over at merrickhealth.com, MAREK health.com. When it comes time to actually purchasing these labs and paying for them, if you're talking to somebody on the phone, you can just mention promo code PowerProject15, or if you are manually checking out on your own, you can enter promo code PowerProject15 to save 15% off all labs. Links to them down in the description, as well as the podcast show notes. Let's get back to the video.
And in the movement of running, you're just going to stop and hunch over and put your hands on your knees. So knowing that, it's knowledge that by intention, you may be by going into a 3 count because you got to go up a hill or you're pushing to the finish line. After 3 count, you would go to a 2 count. A 2 count for most people, they could keep the muscles firing for about 20 seconds. Think about your closing sprint. And then the accumulation of lactic acid builds up where the muscles start shutting down. So you could stay on a 2 count for a long amount of time, but what's your velocity doing? So what we want to do is teach those basics first. Here's an example. Anybody wants to just watch Conor McGregor. Here he arguably has the most expensive training staff in the world. And watch Conor McGregor do a 5-minute match. He's fight 5 minutes, and now he gets a minute of rest. What does Conor McGregor do during the 1 minute? Because remember, you want to maximize your ability to recover during that 1 minute so you're fresher going back in. Does he have a routine? Do you have a routine? And he doesn't. Sometimes he's seated. Sometimes he's kneeling on the ropes. Sometimes he's jabber-jabbering with, the opponent. Sometimes he's pacing. It's random. Mm-hmm. He hasn't developed a protocol. He isn't even aware that when he comes out of a 5-minute round, if he got, the crap kicked out of him, he's on a 2-count breathing cadence, and he now is arguing with the ref. He is in deep, deep trouble. Now you watch Khabib. He's a whole different intelligence. Mm-hmm. This guy knows when he is on that 2-count and he knows he's in trouble, he's got to get back in control. He's got to get his breathing cadence a 4 or higher. Conor McGregor will take a 5-minute round, come out with a 2-count breathing cadence, and go back in with the 2-count breathing cadence because he's too busy jibber-jabbering. He shows me that he doesn't know what he's doing. And that's what we want to do, is we want to give the athlete these tools to know whether or not they're in trouble. How do you know whether or not you're going from the pull-up bar to a barbell and you're okay? The breath is the tell. So one of the things that I commented is that Matt Frazier is arguably the smartest in the sport. People look at him and they see him looking around during a competition and they just think, oh, he's just looking to see who's with him. He's not doing that. He's watching the cadence of the chest move. And if you are far from the finish line and you are on a 2 counts cadence and you have more than 2 minutes to go, you're not a contender. You eventually will slow down because the accumulation of lactic acid is going to force those muscles to make you slow down if you don't slow down.
Yeah.
So part of it is that it's about knowledge. It's about awareness of where you are. And if you go straight into nasal breathing, you haven't learned the basics yet. Mm-hmm. And that's where the problem is that everything is getting too advanced and people don't know where the structure needs to start. And we see it. And that's why I bring up Conor McGregor. At the highest level, he doesn't know what he's doing. Mm. And if you don't believe me, watch him in one of his fights. Just watch.
What are some maybe strategies that people aren't utilizing? Like you mentioned active recovery. Like, would you think that maybe some years from now in the UFC, we'll see the guy in the corner doing some squats in between his rounds or something?
He should do it in training. So part of it is that you have a warm-up protocol. Why don't you have a recovery protocol for your recovery between sets? Mm. Like, why wouldn't you? Conor McGregor knows he's going 5 minutes, 1 minute of rest. Why doesn't he have a 1 minute recovery protocol and know exactly what that protocol is, that ritual, to maximize his recovery within that 1 minute? If he is doing it random, that tells me he has no concept of this. Mm. Every single time, it's different, meaning he doesn't know that the body responds to repetition. Like, I'll give you an example. So at the CrossFit Games, I loved, this doesn't happen as much anymore, but one of the things that I do is I teach the athletes that I coach to ride an assault bike after a Metcon. And the reason is because the number of muscles that are being used on the assault bike is more than any other movement. And it allows the heart rate also to stay up after a Metcon. And what's happening is that when you ride that assault bike, just like we talked about earlier, that lactate that's in the blood will get consumed by some of the muscles that are moving. Essentially, it accelerates the rate in which you're clearing that lactic acid, lactate clearance. So my athletes, they practice this. And the more you practice, the better those muscles get at pulling that lactate out of the blood and consuming as a fuel and removing the acidity, right? The high intensity creates this, but the low intensity can clear it. So I would love to go to after where the athletes, they finish working out and they're back there, recovering, and they're doing some recovery protocols. And there's a lot of assault bikes there and people just hop on them. And I like to go up to people and ask, I go, so you like riding an assault bike after workouts? Oh, no, I just saw Camille doing this. And so I jumped on it and I started doing it. So you don't do this in training? No, I just saw all that's doing is making them more tired. Because it's not a recovery protocol because they don't practice it. And so what we need to do is we need to be aware that the body responds like when you did that pacing workout. You didn't see him today, but he did legit. We know that if we put a stimulus on the body and you practice it over and over again, the body becomes more efficient at doing it through motor memory. So I did a workout just to build this confidence. Like we ran 40 seconds down the road, rested for 15, and ran back 40 seconds. He didn't have a watch. I made him at the starting line, put a circle in the street around his feet. And I told him, you're going to have this circle as your starting point. We're going to run 40 seconds down, rest 15, and you're going to run 40 seconds back on my go. If you match your same speed going out with your same speed coming back, when I yell stop after rep number 2, you should be right in the middle of your circle. We're going to do a total of 10 reps, meaning you have 5 tries to land in your circle. And I expect you to get 1. And you have to do it by feel. And he had no idea he was going to do it. And it's shocking how far you were away.
Yeah.
I mean, we were 200 meters down the road almost.
Yeah.
And imagine you're looking at a dinner plate 200 meters down the road. And imagine if Mark says, you know what? I'll bet you $1,000 that I get within 2 meters of that plate in 40 seconds. You'd take that bet all day long. And there wasn't a single rep that you were beyond, 2 meters on every single one. And so part of it is that you want to create these rituals, these patterns to not only prove to yourself and build confidence, but you also want to be able to get the body more comfortable with, like, for example, your intensity that you picked. And that's where I see a lot of the problems there is that people, they just don't know. They're going and reading the internet and jumping to conclusions, and they're making things difficult. Like, for example, when that training mask came out, like the training mask, another problem, right? That people were running in that. To me, why are you doing intervals in that? It seems like you're making yourself suffer and go slow. Now, if I was a running back, if I played football, I can simulate fourth quarter fatigue by putting that on. That makes sense. But that's where I think a lot of people are jumping to nasal breathing, and they're not aware that you can't do high intensity sprinting by breathing through your nose. It's the same thing like ketogenic. Are you aware that ketogenic is going to be very difficult on your high intensity work? That's the problem.
So why is it such an advanced thing then? Like, let me ask you, if somebody were to implement it, I understand that doing high intensity work, you're going to start to open your mouth. Like I noticed that with jujitsu. Once I purposely want to speed something up in a match, I'll start breathing through my nose, then it'll be nose mouth, and my opponent's already breathing all through their mouth. So I know once I turn it up on him, they're fucked. Right? So why
is incredible that you know that. That was incredible.
Yeah.
The awareness of your competitor. That's what Fraser is doing, right? You're aware that they're in trouble.
Yeah.
And there's nothing they could do about it. They can't fake it. Yeah, that to me that's where the sophistication of the athlete is in tune. And you're going to beat them because you're smarter.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. You can tell a lot of athletes, especially within the martial art, like they don't realize when they start going like that, they're close to being done.
Right. Well, if you're breathing that way, like a 2 count, so the 2 count is, that person maybe can hold that for 20 seconds and now the muscles are shutting down. If you can get them to hold that for 20 to 30 seconds, they are going to be at less than 100% muscular capacity. And you keep it longer, it's just going to shut them down. Eventually, they're going to tap.
Yeah.
Because you know what? There's no more muscle fiber. That to me is the knowledge.
Hey, little mama, let me whisper in your ear. Like, comment, subscribe to the channel because we continue to bring you peak content on this channel. Obviously, you guys are here. You guys have watched the whole video. So like, comment, subscribe. All right? See you later.